Well, good morning, everyone. You know, it feels like a lower turnout, but it's not. We're just in a bigger room, right? With a little more space to sprawl out. Hopefully, you've been getting some snacks in the back. We have coffee as well. I want to welcome everyone here. My name is Max Paris. I'm a meteorologist over at WKOW, our ABC station in town. WKOW, proud sponsors of Hicklin Lakes Alliance. Love coming here every single month. So I'd like to, well, thank you. Yeah. It's really nice being here with everyone, and again, we'll have the next hour to talk and learn a little bit. I'd like to welcome everyone in person as well as folks joining us virtually on our Zoom webinar. If you see the graphic next to you online, if you want to ask a question, just click the Q&A button beneath you, not the chat button, the Q&A button. That's going to be how we get your questions. And at the end of the event, we'll have some time, about 15 or 20 minutes for questions. Today we're learning about all things interesting that are happening in Dane County to fight climate change and protect our area lakes. Of course, the big topic after the historic flooding of 2018, a lot of new initiatives in place. So let's see what's happened over the last 5 years before construction season ends for the year. It's titled Healthy Lakes, Healthy Climate, and we're going to look at projects to address issues like increasing rain totals, drier summers, warmer impacts. So just extremes, the extreme weather that we're getting more used to in our warming climate. Before we'd like to start today's talk, I want to welcome Stacey Ozan from First Weber to give us a few more updates about Hicklin Lakes Alliance, as well as tell us about today's speaker. Welcome, come on up.
Thanks, Max. And thanks to everybody who is joining us here at the Edgewater today, as well as online. First Weber is so proud to be the presenting sponsor of these monthly talks. I'd like to also thank our other sponsors, hosting sponsor, the Edgewater, supporting sponsors, National Guardian Life Insurance Company and Alliant Energy. Production partners, the UW Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and the UW Extension. And as Max said, we are happy to have WKOW as our media sponsor. At First Weber, we understand the important role our lakes play in bringing people to and keeping people in the Madison area. Our support and yours of the Clean Lakes Alliance will only help to sustain our vibrant community for years to come. Another item that will continue to bring vibrancy to our city is making sure that all people are welcomed here. Currently within its legislative calendar, the Wisconsin Realtors Association is addressing the offensive discriminatory covenants based on race and other protected classes that appear in deeds as well as subdivisions in any of our neighborhoods that were created before 1968 Fair Housing Act. While illegal, this language is offensive and hard for any person to read. Senators Joan Ballweg and LaTanya Johnson and Representatives Todd Novak and Kaylin Haywood are all working on current legislation to create a legal process for an owner of real property affected by deed or other instruments containing discriminatory restrictions can record a certification with the Register of Deeds to discharge and release the restriction from their property. This is absolutely fantastic work that needs all of our support. Now, for some quick updates, you just heard from Max that they'd like me to cover this as well. We will have a Q&A after the talks. Anybody in the room can ask them while they're here. Anybody online can go and put them in the Q&A section. I'm sorry, I'm not the public speaker of my family, but I'm going to get this together. Anyways, if you are in person, we will take your questions. If you're watching online, simply submit your questions in the Q&A section and we'll get to as many as possible. Second, if you haven't renewed your individual friend or business and organization lake partner donation, or if you've never been a donor, now is the time. Clean Lake Alliance is halfway through its annual campaign goal and is hoping to make a big push by the end of 2023. Money donated now will help continue the support of their programs and their projects throughout the year. Clean Lake Alliance has awarded over $1.4 million in grants since 2010, thanks to your donations. Help us continue doing good work on your behalf. Info for everything can be found at cleanlakealliance.org. Back to today's talk. We have two great speakers in the room today. Dane County Joe Parisi and Director of the Dane County Land Water Resource Department, Laura Hicklin. County Executive Joe Parisi has called Dane County his home his entire life. He has been our county executive since 2011. That is a long time, and so great for all of us here in this room. He handles an annual county budget of over $600 million. Laura Hicklin holds a BS in International Agricultural and Natural Resources from the University of Wisconsin, as well as being a certified public manager and real estate broker. In her job, she is responsible for county park system of over 15,000 acres, water levels, aquatic plant management on our lakes, stormwater control, and conservation practices on agricultural lands. Laura's goal is to bring stability to challenging discussions about natural resource management in Dane County. Please join me in welcoming both speakers today. And first on stage is Joe Parisi.
Thanks so much, I appreciate it. And thanks, Max, wherever you are, for your partnership with oh, there you are, straight ahead with Clean Lakes. Really appreciate it. And WKOW, I mean, we work with your good friend Bob Lindmeyer a lot in the area of climate change, which we'll talk a little bit about today and how much it impacts the work that we're doing here. So I really appreciate it. And thanks to James and everyone at Clean Lakes and all of you for being here. It's great. I see familiar faces. I'm sure the people online from, you know, we call this Clean Lakes 101, but I see Dick Wafer, for example, who could, you know, teach me a thing or two about lakes. So, and I'm sure there are folks for whom this is relatively new. So I'll try to do a good 30,000 feet and get a little deeper into it as well. So, as most folks know here, our biggest challenge, you know, the root cause of the challenges that face our lakes when it comes to water quality is algae and its nutrients that go into our water. Those nutrients come from number of places. You know, the main source here is agriculture. Especially when we have traditional row crops, when we get heavy rains, the runoff from phosphorus and other nutrients comes into our water system. But there are also other urban sources and other ways that nutrients find their way into our system. So our way is of addressing this is to look at both prevention and mitigation. And on the prevention side, you know, for a number of years now, we've had partnerships with our farmers to help them implement practices that reduce nutrient runoff into our system. We have some really good working relationships, and we've made a lot of good work there, a lot of good headway. We've also worked and partnered in developing manure digesters because manure is the main source of those nutrients. And as of today, we have 2 digesters up and running that with a number of family farms that contribute to those. And that's doing a lot of really good work, both keeping phosphorus out of the system, as well as generating renewable energy in the form of methane that comes from the anaerobic digestion process. We work with urban areas, mainly through stormwater grants to reduce stormwater runoff. A lot of our system was built a long time ago, and it was built to just flush that rainwater directly into the lakes as quickly as possible when it rains. Challenge with that is twofold. On one hand, nutrients go right from our lawns, from our streets, everywhere that it rains, directly into the lakes. Also, as we saw in 2018, that becomes a problem when you have the heavy downpours that we saw and that are becoming more consistent in our area because of climate change. And then we have, you know, issues with flooding. So now we're not only addressing the nutrient side of this, but we're working to address the flooding piece also. Then we have a number of kind of really innovative programs, again, partnering with our farmers. We have a continuous cover grant program. And what that is for farmers who are row cropping right now, who would like to convert all or some of their land, say they have marginal land they'd like to have in prairie or grasses. We have grants to help them convert. And then farmers who want to go all the way to do rotational grazing, for example, we help them with the seed money, literally seed money, to convert from row crops to continuous cover and to do grazing. And it was, you know, I still remember the first farm that we worked with when we first launched this program. I went and visited the family, and the young farmer said to me, he said, I'm so excited about this, about going to back to rotational grazing, because this is how my grandfather farmed. And so it's come full circle. And we know that rotational grazing helps keep more of those nutrients on the ground. When it rains, you have that cover there. It stays, more of the nutrients stay where they are. And it also helps in our work to mitigate climate change in two ways. First of all, again, it slows down the runoff from those heavy rains. And second of all, when you have perennial plants, when you have prairie, that sucks carbon from the air and puts it into the soil. And there is more carbon in our soil than there is in all of the trees on the planet. I just learned that fact last night in a documentary. So I come here and sound smart today. But it's really fascinating. You know, it's when you look at a prairie restoration, for example, because we also have purchased a number of farms that have gone up on the market that would become a development, which is going to happen. I live in a development that used to be a farm, and there's a place for that. But sometimes you have an area that's very sensitive, and we want to preserve it and turn it into prairie. We did that in the Pheasant Branch Nature Preserve. We purchased 160 acres there that is now being converted into prairie. And what that does, again, it helps slow down the runoff from nutrients. It helps slow down the runoff from regarding flooding, and then it pulls that carbon into the soil. And an acre of prairie sequesters as much carbon as an acre of forested land. So it's really exciting when we get these multiple benefits, all of the environmental benefits, plus habitat restoration, and certainly recreation that's available to people now. And we sure see that in places like Pheasant Branch Nature Preserve, where the trails are heavily used by hikers and bikers, and it's really, really good to see. So our current major initiatives, when Laura comes up, she's going to talk a little bit more in detail, but we have all of the programs that I just mentioned are ongoing. And then some of the new things that we're focusing on have to do with some new approaches and some new approaches to old things that we've been doing already. One of the things that we've seen is most of our runoff that we're mostly focused on right now comes from the North Mendota watershed, out around Hicklin, Middleton, that area. There's a lot of farming there. Everything that runs off there goes into Lake Mendota and flows through the entire chain of lakes. So when you can stop it at the source, you're helping not just one lake, but the entire chain of lakes. And so that's the watershed our manure digesters are located at, but we need to do more there. So we've made an investment so far with this $3 million in this year's budget to do a feasibility study and acquire land in the Mendota watershed, North Mendota watershed, to build a much larger manure treatment plant to handle multiple farms all at once, kind of a community plant, so more and more farmers can use it, both large farmers and small, because often what we'll see is some of the larger farms can afford to have better manure management than some of the smaller farms. And so we want to make this accessible to all the smaller farms. If you think about it, I believe, are there more cows than people in Dane County? Is that? In terms of phosphorus? 2.8 million people worth of cows doing what cows do in addition to producing milk, right? And when you think about it with people and human waste, it goes through a very extensive treatment process. That's not the case with waste from animals. Most of the time it's spread on fields. You know, we do have, as I mentioned, you know, a number of farms doing digesters, but not nearly enough to get to where we need to be. So the Renew the Blue report identified larger community manure digesters as key to reaching our goal. So we've made that investment to start doing the initial work, to bring people together, to identify a site. We've worked with farmers. Laura and her team have begun meetings with local farmers because we want to continue partnering with them. We want to get their input. We want to design something that's going to work. This will be a multi-year project. It's going to be a very expensive project, but from where we sit, it's extremely critical to where we need to be and how we're going to get to where we need to be. Let's see what else I have on my list here. Okay. I mentioned the Pheasant Branch Nature Conservancy. That program has been fantastic, and I want to thank Clean Lakes Nature Conservancy, other folks who have partnered with us, because as folks may know, Dane County has a lot of land that we purchased, a lot of natural areas, for the simple reason that they're not making that stuff anymore. And we are the fastest growing county in the state of Wisconsin. In my lifetime, my hometown, Dane County is more than double the population. That's also how old I am. But we're not slowing down. We're continuing to grow. And we need to preserve these areas that just won't be here if we don't aggressively go out there and do that. So the reason Pheasant Branch was such a, a critical area, place to conserve is because of its location by the headwaters to Pheasant Branch Creek, which goes right into Lake Mendota. And Laura will probably talk a little more in detail, but again, as I mentioned, it's 160 acres, and the restoration is being done by county staff. There are a lot of resources, but it's also being helped enormously, and we couldn't do the work we're doing without them, with volunteers, with donations for seed from folks like Clean Lakes, for Friends of Pheasant Branch, say that at 8 o'clock in the morning 3 times, Friends of Pheasant Branch, who are out there in the middle of winter, in the heat of summer, helping with prairie restoration. They do seeds, they plant plugs, they start native plants. And it's really, we just wouldn't be able to have the natural bounty that we're able to preserve without folks volunteering and helping in all of the different ways that they can. And that's really nice, because then it doesn't belong to Dane County. It's not just the Dane County Park. It belongs to everyone, and everyone has skin in the game, and everyone has been part of making it such a nice place. So one of the things I haven't mentioned yet is Suck the Muck, which I'm certain most people are aware of. Has anyone not heard of Suck the Muck? Wow, we've done a pretty good job. It's a catchy title. Thank you. This gives me a chance to explain it. So I'm sure there are 100 people online who've never heard of it. So in addition to, we've talked about the prevention work that we're doing, right? And we have to do that. We have to stop phosphorus from coming into the lakes in the first place. But the challenge is there's a lot of phosphorus in the system right now. And we kind of latched onto this when we were looking at, we want to measure what we're doing to make sure we're getting the results we need. That we were doing all of this work with our farmers. We knew that less phosphorus was going into the system, but when we got in there, and I'm guessing this wasn't a surprise to people like Dick, when we got in there and looked at the phosphorus levels, they weren't going down. And so we scratched our heads and said, well, there's less phosphorus going in, but the levels aren't going down. And so through more research and digging both with our staff and the DNR and other folks, we found that there is muck in those streams that feed into the chain of lakes. This phosphorus-laden muck, in some cases 8 feet deep, and over 100 years worth of sediment buildup, a lot of which happened, decades ago before some of the conservation practices were put in place by a lot of our farmers. And so this muck is full of phosphorus. And so we can stop the phosphorus upstream, but all the water running over that muck every day takes that dissolved phosphorus as it rises and puts it into our lake system. So we embarked a number of years ago on our plan to go in and remove that sludge. And we've been at it for a number of years now. Every year we do a different section. I'm going to look at my cheat sheet here because there's some numbers. So we've been in Dorn, Token, and 6 Mile Creek, and we've removed 180,000 pounds of phosphorus. 180,000 pounds. And when you recall the fact that has been repeated here, that I'm sure in numerous talks, that 1 pound of phosphorus can result in up to 500 pounds of algae in our system. 180,000 pounds of phosphorus is nothing to sneeze at. It was contained in 56,000 tons of sludge. So we go in, we suck that sludge, that muck, suck the muck out of the streams, and usually we've been able to find county land, county park land, in one case a mine that needed restoration, an open pit mine that needed restoration, and that muck is piped to that location. it's dried, it's covered, it's planted over in prairie seed, and so it's part of the prairie restoration. And then when it does rain, the phosphorus that's in that muck is sequestered in that soil and protected by the prairie on top. So we've been really fortunate that we've been able to find such environmentally friendly ways to dispose of the muck. And this year, we're gonna be in Door Creek, and we've allocated another 200 million, or excuse me, another 2 million toward that. So the final piece, before I talk about kind of our other challenge today, is another form of dredging that's not suck the muck, that sometimes these get confused. Suck the muck is phosphorus removal. It's from the streams. It's to take that stuff out of the system, so it's not creating algae. As we mentioned earlier, 2018, everyone remembers, was an incredibly challenging year with the floods that we had. And the floods had obviously a number of impacts. You have the initial flash floods that we saw here, Phildale, Mazel, Black Earth, Cross Plains, Middleton, and many other areas that were devastating. But then what we saw in the days after was we saw the lakes start to back up. We saw downtown Madison going underwater. We saw, we could go through numerous examples. Now, the kind of root cause really of that piece, first of all, was the unprecedented rains that were the root cause. But when you think of our four lakes are like four sinks that are connected. Now, some of them are connected through locks and dams, some through shallow marsh areas. But everything that comes into those lakes, especially everything that drains into Lake Mendota, has to go out the other end. And we can and we did open all of the locks, everything that we have control over, but there's just no way to move that water through the system fast enough, even with all the gates open. So when we debriefed from that event, we realized that these channels were just not deep enough. We're not able to control them enough to move that water out. And again, this is because of decades and decades of sediment. It's a different type of sediment. It's not like the phosphorus-laden muck that we're soaking. This is more like sand. This is mostly like construction site erosion and that type of thing that has just filled up those channels. So we've been going in for the last few years and dredging that out, mostly with hydraulic dredge, like a big vacuum cleaner. And we're opening up those channels one by one, starting mostly in the bottom of the chain of lakes and working our way up, because you don't want to obviously open up the channels up top and then flood Monona, Stoughton, and Pleasant Springs and everywhere else downstream. You may have seen, if you get out McFarland Way, that we've been out there for the last 2 summers actually, sucking the muck out there. And as you're going out to McFarland and exiting McFarland, Babcock Park's on the right. On the left, you might see this big mound of what looks like dirt. That's our dewatering pond there. And so all of that dredge goes to that pond, that dries. And since that's sand, again, the good news with, what are you going to do with the stuff you take out of there is it's so relatively pure, we're able to use it in construction again. So it all gets reused. We work with local construction companies, and instead of, bringing in new sand for road projects and driving in parking lots and that sort of thing, they're able to use that sand. So that project, we still have a few more years because it's such a massive undertaking, but that will allow us, when we're finally done, the final phase will be Tenney Park between the 2 lakes. That will allow us to move water like we need to, as we need to, when we need to, when we get these events. And so, I think that leads me to the events. These weather events that we've never really experienced before, certainly not with the regularity that we are. We certainly all see the global events. We see category whatever hurricanes, we see typhoons that are stronger. We see Canada is on fire, and that was impacting us this year, indirectly. The impacts of climate change have come faster and stronger than even predicted, and there's just no denying now what we're dealing with. Now, years ago, probably close to a decade ago, we partnered with the university in Dane County to ask them what climate change was going to bring to our area, because we see the global impacts, but as county government, we're responsible for dealing with the impacts of it and doing our part to prevent it. So impacts, they told us, is exactly what's gonna happen. Warmer and wetter winters and springs, downpours like we've seen. Some years, it's important to remember in a year like this, when we're having a drought and this high weather, that there's a difference between weather and climate. When you look at climate, you're looking at patterns. There will be years when all of us fit neatly into a little category. But what we're going to see is more, and you have to prepare for more of those heavy rain events for one thing, in addition to the heat. So we took a look at what we had to do from an emergency management mitigation standpoint with all of our different departments, making adjustments and preparations for rain events like that I won't go into today for time's sake. But then we also said, okay, what can we do? How do we do our part to prevent this? Because something like climate change can seem like such a massive issue, right? It's like, how can one person, one entity have a positive impact and begin to try to reverse something as global and devastating as climate change? But it turns out that's the only thing that was going to work. It's going to work to fight climate change, because everyone has to be a part of it, because everyone is part of the cause and everyone has to be part of the solution, be it from individuals to our businesses, to how we live our lives. And we in the wealthier part of this globe are responsible for the vast majority of climate change, both historically and even today. And so the good news in all of this bad news is there is something we can do about it. And I see this as the ultimate think globally, act locally effort. Because the folks who are experiencing the most devastating impacts of climate change, yes, we are right here, certainly, and we're talking about our lakes, we're talking about the other issues, but the folks who are really suffering the greatest are the folks who have contributed the least to this cause. Bangladesh is underwater. We have climate migrants coming to the US, lining up at our borders. And, without getting too into the issue of immigration, these folks are victims of climate change in a lot of cases, sometimes violence, but we have climate migrants, people who are leaving their communities because they can't farm anymore. And we could go on and on and on and look at the impact, but we can have a positive impact on that right here at the same time we're addressing challenges that face us locally. So at Dane County, we decided to walk the walk and say, okay, before we tell everyone else what they need to do, what can we do? So we set an internal goal before there was a public goal of offsetting all of the electricity we use with renewable energy by 2025. We invested a couple million every year in the beginning in energy efficiency. Then we assessed for solar, and we put solar on every roof in Dane County government that would accept it. That still wasn't enough, so we developed a couple of large solar fields that you may have seen. One's up by our landfill, one is at the Dane County Airport. One at the Dane County Airport, I think, is a wonderful example of the fact that we don't have to worry about this, what's good for business or what's good for the environment dichotomy anymore, because now they're one and the same. And as an example, our project out at the airport, we partnered with MG&E. We said, we have this land that we surveyed that the FAA said we can use for this purpose that would be great for solar. If you build a solar field here, we promise we'll use all of the electricity, we'll buy it all. So it's a risk-free investment for MG&E. We lease MG&E the land. They built the solar field. No money out of our pocket. They happened to be building it also during the pandemic when everyone was getting laid off, and these were outdoor jobs that put people to work. That field is now generating over 40%, offsetting over 40% of the electricity the county government uses, just that one project. And this year alone, we will save approximately $300,000 on our electric bill from that project. Now, you can look at something like this to scale from homes to businesses. Faith communities are getting involved. We're saving taxpayers $300,000 this year and offsetting tons of carbon because we built this. And this year, with a field that we built that's double the size out by our landfill, we reached our goal of offsetting all of the electricity we use in Dane County with renewable energy 2 years before our goal. So in 2023, we became only the fourth county in the region. Offset 100% of our electricity with renewables, and we're saving money while we're doing it, and we're doing our part toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We also have a goal of by 2030 to become carbon neutral. And we're doing that in a couple of ways. Offsetting our electricity helped a lot, but we also have a lot of vehicles. You know, certainly during the winter time, you see the big orange snow plows out there. Well, what we've done, and some of you are probably aware of this, we've taken our landfill, which produces methane gas, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. We built a $28 million plant on site, and we extract that methane gas, we clean it and compress it, and turn it into renewable compressed natural gas that we can use in vehicles. And right now, over half of our trucks, and replace them, you know, annually as they come up for replacement, over half of those big trucks run on renewable CNG straight from the landfill. We sell the remainder on the open market of what we can't use, and we earn several $1 million annually, again, for the taxpayers, from selling that renewable fuel. We paid in the first few years, we paid off the investment. So there are so many things we can do. And then finally, our final path, the final piece of the puzzle with the being carbon neutral comes back to what we talked about lately in the work that Laura and her team do. And that's with carbon sequestration through prairie restoration and conservation and other projects like that. And so now that we've hit our goals and where we're at, we're helping others do the same. And what we see is more and more momentum, because it's kind of scary to be the first for a lot of people. We weren't scared. Maybe we should have been, but we dove in head first, and we did it, and we got there. And now, because of legislation that was passed last year, the Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't sound like it has anything to do with energy, was one of the most important clean energy pieces of legislation ever passed. And it means that now everyone in this room, be it at your home, in your faith community, at your place of employment, you can get a 30% rebate on solar. You can get a 30% straight rebate on installing a heat pump heating system, or numerous other cutting edge technologies that reduce your carbon footprint and save you money. There are incentives for installation. And so it becomes, the question doesn't become, should we do this? The question really becomes, why aren't we doing it? Because this was structured to make renewable energy in the home and business competitive, cost competitive with the traditional type of energy. And in some cases that we've seen, even less expensive. And plus then you have little or no electricity bill. I mean, I had a great summer, and it was like 95 degrees. I was cranking my AC, and I got a $6 credit on my MTV bill. Now, MTV might not like that, but I thought it was great. So, you know, we can save money and do the right thing at the same time. So anyone who wants more information on this, please feel free to reach out to our office. We have an Office of Energy and Climate Change that has a website that has all of these incentives and how you can qualify for them. If you're a nonprofit, you can still get it. Because it used to be you had to pay taxes in order to get these incentives. Now, if you're a unit of government or if you're a nonprofit, you can still get those incentives as well. So the reason I kind of veered off on this a little bit is because this is something we can do directly to help not only the global scene, but our condition right here. And we have to start making the connection, in my opinion, between climate change and clean lakes, because we do see that a portion of the work that we're doing to reduce phosphorus runoff is being offset by the new changing weather patterns and the changes being brought about climate change, by climate change. And so we have to add another piece to the pie of what we have to do to clean up and keep our lakes clean. And obviously the benefits go way beyond our lakes. This is about the planet that our children have to live on for the next 50, 60, 70 years. And again, the good news is there's something we can do about it. But unlike so many problems that just seem too out of reach and too big, this is something we can have an impact on. And to me, that's some pretty good news. So I'm the person who gets to come up and talk about all this cool stuff and come up with some ideas and say yes and take credit for it. But the people who do all the work are actually folks like Dave Merritt, who's back there. A lot of folks may know Dave, who's worked so hard in so many of our solar projects, in our manure digesters and all of the kind of heavy lifting, big business type of stuff. And of course, Laura Hicklin and her team. who come up with a lot of these ideas and then also actually go out there and make all those ideas happen. So a big thanks to you guys and your teams, as well again as all the volunteers and people who are helping to get the word out about all the good work that's going on in our lakes. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Laura to talk about some projects and some more specifics and whatever else she has on her agenda. And then we're both happy to answer questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Joe, for your great remarks. And thanks to all of you for being in the audience today and for supporting County Executive Parisi and the Clean Lakes Alliance. Through your actions, you have allowed us to make progress on climate change and lake improvement. Dane County released the Climate Action Plan in 2020, and 2 years later, we were at the table when Renew the Blue came online. Our goal today is to show you how we implement projects that bring both of these plans into reality. So let's go back to that first slide and let's consider the picture here of the Lower Yahara River Trail. This trail spans the north shore of Lake Wabisa and was constructed in 2017. Thanks to Renew the Blue, we know that over 55% of people experience the lakes by biking, 72% experience it by walking, and 25% experience it through fishing, all of which you can do from this great trail. The trail helps people connect to the lakes, and that connection causes them to care about the lakes. We also know that this trail serves as an important commuter route from McFarland and other communities to the south, and the Climate Action Plan tells us that biking is one way to reduce emissions from driving. Had we titled this presentation Bike Trails in Dane County, it would not have been a good fit for Clean Lakes 101. But when we look at these projects closely, we can understand how they do in fact support both our climate change and lake goals. The combined 400 pages or so of the Climate Action Plan and Renew the Blue make it clear that there is no single solution for reaching our climate change and clean lake goals. But if there is one thing that you come away with today, I hope that it's a renewed appreciation for permanently protecting land. Land protection is the best way to mitigate climate change, and it is the best way to implement Renew the Blue. The Dane County Park System is the workhorse of our climate change, our climate action and clean lake goals. You need land control to implement projects like legacy sediment removal. You need land control to provide adequate buffers to our most sensitive wetlands and water resources. Nature will help us meet our goals, but only if it has space to do its job. Restored habitat is going to provide many services, including clean water and carbon sequestration. But if you take 100 acres and whittle it down to 1 acre or even 10 acres, you're going to end up spending considerably more on engineered solutions that are difficult to impossible to maintain in the long run. And then you've also lost out on the other benefits of public land, such as physical exercise and improved mental health. Last week, Dane County approved the historic $12 million purchase of the 625 acres you see outlined in red on this map. These lands are along the Sugar River. In 2019, we spent $9.8 million to add 160 acres to Pheasant Branch Conservancy. Earlier this year, we granted over $1 million to the town of Gulfport and Brownsville Conservancy to purchase 105 acres in the 6 Mile Creek watershed. All of these investments are driven by climate change and water quality goals, and they are the cornerstone of both plans. Please join us in supporting these purchases when they are proposed, and let your elected leaders know that they are important to you. Ask your community to make purchases as well. We offer grants to municipalities and nonprofit organizations to protect land, and we need more partners doing this work. So regardless of whether a piece of property is publicly or privately owned, it needs to be managed to maximize the climate change benefits and clean water goals. So as County Executive Parisi mentioned, we have several programs that help both public land managers and private landowners do exactly that. We invest considerably in the land that we own and manage, and we thank partners like the Clean Lakes Alliance and the Friends of Pheasant Branch for their partnership on land management. We also have the continuous cover program. Established in 2019, we work one-on-one with private property owners to transition away from conventional row crops. Harvestable buffers, an initiative that the Clean Lakes Alliance supported, is now part of continuous cover. In this program, landowners commit to 15-year contracts, and the county pays for the conversion to perennial cover, in addition to an annual rent and maintenance subsidy. I want to make it clear that we're not messaging that conventional row crops are bad. What we are saying is that there are options available for landowners that have fields or portion of fields that are unproductive, wet, highly erodible, or adjacent to surface water and wetlands. This is also a great option for farmers that want to diversify or change their systems of grazing. Here's another program that we offer that might feel more relevant to the audience today. We have a free native plant program that improves land management through the distribution of native plants. So Renew the Blue tells us that anywhere from 69 to 86% of people are willing to plant native plants in rain gardens. And this program gives out free native plants to schools, neighborhood associations, and community groups. You can participate in this program 3 different ways. You can make a financial donation during the Dane native plant sale. So you're donating funds so that we can then buy native plants to distribute to groups. You can volunteer to grow native plant seedlings that are then distributed, or you can apply to receive native plants for your own project, and we offer that opportunity twice a year. As we work to acquire and restore lands, we have also invested in staff and equipment that will model and measure our progress. Pictured here are Alex and James on our staff that are using new soil sampling equipment to monitor changes to soil carbon levels over time. They're working in a field that was converted through the continuous cover program. Dane County is voluntarily implementing many of the Renew the Blue priority actions, and the work we do includes practice verification, documentation, and monitoring. This work is intended to build confidence and transparency in the implementation. So let's talk a little bit more about the sediment removal project that County Executive Parisi outlined. The first one is our Urban Water Quality Grant Program. Every orange dot on this map represents a project that Dane County funded. I hope you can see those dots. Through this program, municipalities receive grants to install stormwater practices that trap phosphorus and sediment and increase infiltration. The county stormwater ordinance is only about 20 years old. So think about all of the development that occurred in Dane County prior to 2000. Only a very small fraction of that development meets the standards in place today. This program has awarded nearly $11 million for 82 projects that remove more than 894,000 pounds of sediment and more than 1,800 pounds of phosphorus annually. Without these projects, that sediment and phosphorus would be running directly into our streams and rivers. It's much better to trap it before it gets to our surface waters. But this program is undersubscribed. So one of my hopes today is that you'll go back to your neighborhood association or you'll go back to your municipality to encourage them to apply to this grant program. We will work with organizations one-on-one to help them identify potential projects. We will help guide the design process, and then we will fund implementation of that project. The second program is Yahara sediment removal. As the executive noted, here we're removing sediment that is low in phosphorus, but is blocking the flow of water through the chain. Millions of pounds of sediment enter the chain annually from urban runoff, making it difficult to manage lake levels during high water conditions. We have completed the work between Lakes Monona and Wabisa and are currently working downstream from Lakes Wabisa and Kegonsa. To date, 40,000 cubic yards have been removed in phase 1, and we project that phase 2 will remove about 152,000 cubic yards. And finally, we turn to legacy sediment removal. Since 2018, we have removed 60,000 cubic yards of sediment that is high in phosphorus. When we remove that material, we also re-meander stream reaches, restore wetland, and install habitat improvements. It's an emerging science, but there is strong evidence that wetlands play a critical role in carbon sequestration. So as the executive noted, our next legacy sediment removal project will be in the Door Creek wetlands. We started planning this next phase in 2022. And you can see here on the map that we're just north of Lake Uganza. During the assessment period for legacy sediment removal, we realized that the Door Creek watershed is the second largest contributor of phosphorus to the watershed, and that the stream contains some of the largest sediment deposits of the tributaries that were assessed. Since 2016, we've been working with farmers and landowners within the watershed to install conservation practices that prevent new sediment from reaching the stream. In addition to the sediment removal, our goals for this project include improved pike spawning habitat, reduced flooding, and enhanced wetlands. So this slide gives a really good illustration of how humans have actually changed Door Creek over time and kind of intensified some of the problems that we're facing. If you look at the map on the left, you can see a dark squiggly line, and that's showing you what Door Creek looked like historically before human intervention. And if you look at the map on the right, that blue line shows how it was straightened to improve agricultural drainage sometime in the 1900s. So you notice quite a big difference. You can even see from that red circle on the maps that the outlet to Lake Uganza was moved rather significantly when the creek was straightened. So when we go in, hopefully in late 24 or early 25, we're not going to be able to fully restore that original meander. But if you can see the blue line on this map and that yellow squiggly line, that's conceptually giving you an idea of the remeandering that we hope to put in place during construction. So this slide brings us back to the importance of public land protection and the role it plays in meeting our climate change and clean water goals. Legacy sediment removal at Door Creek would not be possible if Dane County had not started investing in land acquisition in the early 2000s. The map on the left shows public land ownership in the project area through 2022, and the map on the right shows 130 acres that we purchased last year. So this new property that was purchased, outlined in red, is going to buffer the restoration work once it's done. It's going to provide construction access, and that northern 40 on the map is likely going to serve as the dewatering basin for the sediment removal. Shifting gears, let's talk a little bit about the manure treatment project. So this is a priority project that was identified in both the Climate Action Plan and Renew the Blue. The Climate Action Plan has a rather ambitious goal of outsourcing half of all manure in digesters by 2030, and Renew the Blue recommends an additional manure processing facilities within the watershed. We currently have 2 community digesters in Dane County, and we're working on a study to assess the feasibility of a third facility. Manure can be a valuable resource if handled correctly. Through this project, we hope to reduce our reliance on fertilizer imports, make nutrients available to deficient areas in our county, help farms manage practices on their fields, improve water quality through reduced winter spreading, and reduce emissions. So here we have a quick summary of the number of animals or animal units, cows, in Dane County, and you can see on the far right-hand column, we estimate that there are approximately 60,000 cows in the North Mendota watershed, which is outlined in the map in red. So today, surprisingly, the existing facilities are able to process 24% of the manure in the watershed. And if we're lucky, we will be able to bring a third facility online that will help us meet that 50% goal in the watershed. So to help with this project, we've assembled a team of farmers and agronomists that are going to help guide the project, share their challenges, and help us ensure that the project is something that farmers will actually want to participate in. We're actually accepting our requests for proposals this week. They'll come in, and our hope is to have a consultant on board by the end of the year that will work with the county and the farmer team and other partners to explore different technology options for the facility. So in the interest of time, I'm going to stop there to make sure that we have time for questions. That's usually the best part of these discussions. I've got my pen because I know we're going to get some really good ideas from the questions that are generated. We do have some additional slides on lake levels and aquatic plant management. So if you're hoping to hear a little bit about the 2023 season, happy to entertain questions on those topics as well.
All right, quick round of applause for Laura Hicklin. We have a few minutes for questions, but Laura mentioned we are running a little long, so we'll go around the room and then see if we get any online. Wrap it all up.
Laura, you mentioned these manure digesters. Is there any effort to take account of farms that may have their own digesting systems or encourage them to do so?
It's possible. There aren't too many in Dane County. There's only one individual privately owned digester in Dane County right now, but we are hoping as part of the project that we could coordinate with the two existing facilities along with the product that's generated through the new facility to create what we call a value-added product from manure. So one challenge is that you actually need to have enough volume of manure that you can do something with it. And if we combine that volume from all three facilities, we're optimistic that we'd be able to create some type of compost or value-added manure fertilizer product that could then be used throughout the county. And that is how we're going to reduce our reliance on phosphorus imports.
We have a question online.
Yeah.
That's working.
Whoa. Interesting question about solar here. Has the county looked at raising the solar so agriculture like sheep grazing could be compatible? Is that a possibility? Very technical question.
Dave, unless you have something to add, I mean, we're certainly open to that sort of thing, and I've had discussions with people personally about it. I think the potential for solar and integrating it into ag is large and it's growing and untapped. So I think it's something we'd certainly be open to. We do when we partner with folks to develop the larger solar, they do plant native pollinator habitat now. But as you mentioned, the first online, there is a growing research into using it for phones, that's my phone. To using it in ag too. So I think stay tuned on that.
Okay, we have time for one more question, unfortunately, just because we're running a little long here.
We can go longer, Max. We can go a few minutes
We'll
longer.
have time for 3 more questions.
So farmers are spreading manure on their fields for fertilizer. So if instead they take that manure to a digester, they would have to do something else for fertilizer. So what are they using? Is it any better than manure in terms of the nutrient load of runoff from lakes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that really, that's kind of the key of the whole project is making sure that farmers continue to be able to utilize the fertilizer benefits of the manure. I do not want these projects to result in an increase of imported fertilizer. So what's happening at the existing facilities is that the farmers receive the nutrients back that they need for their crop needs. And then it's that extra material that would be processed into a product and given or made available somehow to other farmers in the watershed. So we certainly recognize that that's essential. And the nutrient management plans of participating farms would be part of the puzzle to bring the whole project together.
A couple more hands, that was a great question.
By the way, this is a great presentation. I just wish everybody in the county were here. I'm going to speak just as a longtime business resident. Maybe I'm going to be like a legacy resident. But in any case, when I hear what you're saying about protecting land being a priority, and I get that. And yet, if you live in our area where our neighborhoods are, you see more and more concrete, no additions of park space, more of the park space being converted into specific uses, lots more traffic being drawn downtown. Now, I know that this is a city issue in large part. However, it is very difficult for people in the isthmus to understand how land preservation and thinking environmentally in that way is a priority for the county. And yet here we are seeing our neighborhoods become concrete junks.
Yeah, so separate but related issues. You probably benefit disproportionately, I would say, in downtown Madison from our prairie restoration and wetland restoration in these other areas. Because of the flooding issue that I talked about before. I mean, the reason that the isthmus flooded in 2018 was twofold, because we couldn't move the water out fast enough, that we talked about. But it also has to do with the speed at which that water hits and runs off directly into the lakes. For example, I don't know, probably, I don't know, some of you recall the number from the Pheasant Branch project alone. If that would have been developed into a residential neighborhood as it was kind of planned out to be, versus what we did with restoration of prairie and wetland. David, where do you remember the number? The numbers are enormous with the thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that will not rush directly into Mendota during one of those heavy rain events now because of that. So all of that work directly impacts the flooding piece for downtown. And when we say prioritizing, we were definitely prioritizing this, but the county has a lot of priorities. As was mentioned, we have $600 million operating budget. There are a lot of priorities. Now, again, as you mentioned, we don't control, development and neighborhood issues in various places, but what we're doing isn't at the expense of something else. It's really just a lot of mutual benefit from our eyes.
I'll just add that we really encourage municipalities to help us identify those priorities. So we have the grant program that we make available. And so our goal is to say to Madison or Verona or Fitchburg, like, this is important to your residents. You need to invest in these projects and Dane County will help you. So Dane County has given several grants to the city. We gave a significant grant many years ago for what used to be known as Central Park. We helped fund that. We helped fund city acquisitions at Cherokee Marsh. But we've definitely noticed a drop off in applications from our municipal partners. So we'd like to see those numbers go up again.
And for one more question, then we'll have to end it, unfortunately.
Hi, I heard that zebra mussels could be a factor in water flow, particularly under bridges and stuff. Could you talk about that and how you're dealing with it?
Actually the feedback we've gotten from our staff is that they don't feel that it's been a major impediment for flow. The zebra mussel population has changed quite a bit over the years, and I think to our staff's surprise, they don't feel that it's impacting flow in particular the way they might have anticipated. But I think we should talk to Dick and others after the presentation because they might have a much better insight on that exact question.
By the way, giving this talk with Dick Lathrop in the room is like, giving a lecture in front of your professor. So high pressure.
Okay, well, thanks so much. One more round of applause. All right, of course, that was Dane County Executive Joe Parisi and Laura Hicklin with the county talking about future plans for mitigation on climate change. If we didn't get to your question, again, I know there were still a few left. You can email info@cleanlakesalliance.org and they'll work to get you that answer. Maybe they'll stick around a little bit after and you can get that personal one-on-one. We're not going to have a one-on-one cafe in October, taking the month off, but the following month in November on the 8th, we're going to be back at the Edgewater or online for a topic called Overcoming Barriers to Water Quality Progress in the Yahara Watershed. Kind of building off of what we talked about today. The presenting on that topic will be UW-Madison research scientist Dr. Eric Booth. Again, November 8th, you can find more info at cleanlakesalliance.org. And I have an update for everyone today. You may have seen, if you watched WKOW at all, that I will be moving on at the end of the week. So this is my last Science 101 cafe with everyone. And it's been such a highlight for me over the past couple of years to be able to come out every month, talk with you guys, learn a lot about what the county and private organizations are doing to protect our Great Lakes. My partner is just graduated from law school here, and he and I will move to Chicago, and it's my hometown, as he starts his career, and I'll be moving on down there as well. I haven't announced it publicly, but you know, now is better than ever, right? I'll be heading to a cable news network called News Nation to join their team there. So technically, if you still wanted to watch me, you'd be able to. They're on cable, they're on streaming, and we'll just be talking about whether I'm more of a nationwide scale. Again, my name is Max Paris, WKLW, proud sponsor of Clear Lakes Alliance, and signing off one last time.